Bible Worm, reading the Bible with Bible Worm.
Welcome to Bible Worm, getting to the core of the biblical text. I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, Professor of Religious Studies at Hendrix College and Theologian in Residence of Canvas Community in Little Rock, Arkansas.
And I'm Dr. Amy Robertson, Director of Lifelong Learning and Music at Congregation Or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia. We're here every week to discuss the biblical text, both as biblical scholars and as people of faith, one Jewish and one Christian.
This week, we continue with our summer series, Disputing with God, picking up where we left off last time with the story of the repair of the relationship between God and Israel after the incident of the golden calf, as told in Exodus 33, 1-21, and 34, 1-9. God is at first so angry about the golden calf that God seems to be finished with Israel, sending the messenger with them to the promised land, but the divine presence remaining on Sinai, lest God's anger consume them. By the end, though, through the mediation of Moses, God and Israel seem to accept one another as they are. The people confess they are stiff-necked, but God commits to being with them in spite of their shortcomings. Likewise, God reveals a divine self that is anger as well as compassion. But nonetheless, the people would rather stay in the wilderness with God than to enter the promised land alone. This relationship is messier than we might like, but God and the people remain together in the messiness, committed to a future together. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Amy, it's time for Bible Worm.
I know it. That's why I'm here.
I
don't just hang out here in this internet universe.
Just sit in our little Zoom chat, waiting, hoping that someone will show up to talk about biblical texts.
I want to tell you something about Summer Amy today.
Oh, good.
Summer Amy thinks she has more time than she does. And so she starts new hobbies that are ill-fated, but really fun sounding.
What new hobbies has she started?
Well, the hobby that she's started, has really invested very minimal effort in so far, but is to learn at least something about how to play the oud.
You know, I do not even know what an oud is.
I'm going to get my oud and show it to you, and you can describe it to people. It's in this room. Don't worry.
Okay, good. Waiting on the oud. I'm waiting on the oud. Don't know what an oud is, but I'm waiting. Oh. See, I would have called that like a lyre or something. Is that sort of what that is?
Yeah, maybe it's like a lyre. It is a Middle Eastern instrument that looks a little bit like a big guitar, but it's got
rounded
like
in the back.
Bulb. Yeah.
It's like if a coconut and a guitar had a baby.
And then the neck bends back at the, like where it goes into the tuning area.
Yeah.
So it looks like someone broke its neck.
And it has, what is it, 5 strings?
Well, no, so what I'm learning is it has a variable number of strings and variable tunings.
Oh.
So how are you supposed to play things if it could be tuned in a lot of different ways? I'm not sure. This is an Arabic oud that is currently tuned in the Syrian style.
Oh.
I don't know what I'm doing. I'll report back.
That's
It's going to be a lot of fun, Bobby.
Does it look like it's fretless?
Yes, it's fretless.
What was your orchestral instrument? You were a cellist? Cellist?
Mm-hmm.
So you know what you're doing.
Also fretless.
Yes. I fret often. I need frets. I have to fret. I'm as you know, a 4 chords and a smile guitar player.
You would like to say that about yourself as a guitar player, but you are actually a very gifted guitar player. So I'm calling you out.
Well, one of the things that I have done well in my life is I figured out how to do the simplest possible thing that seems like it's pretty good. And so I don't invest a lot of effort beyond the thing that's like good enough.
I mean, that's a skill.
But I'm pretty good. Like I can get to a pretty good spot with many things, but I never become excellent at any of them. All right, Amy.
Anyway.
We are continuing on today in our series on disputing with God. Just picking up where we left off last time in the story of the golden calf. Last time we were in Exodus 32. This time we're in Exodus 33. We're going to read basically the whole thing, 1-21, and then read the first part of 34 in 1-9.
Yeah.
if people are looking for a way to sort of shorten the text, we suggested maybe you could leave out 18 to 21 if you wanted to, because they don't overly much affect the plot. But we're just going to talk about it because we've got infinite amounts of time.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to remind us of or bring in to our memories, consciousnesses before we start reading the text?
I think because so many of us have experience with this text, from different sort of angles or the perspective of different questions. The central, question or almost like character in the story, in my approach to it for this occasion, this year, this summer, is the relationship, like almost as its own character. And while we learned in a last reading that God has indeed decided, no, I'm not going to destroy the people because of this sin. The relationship, like how much God is willing to really be in the midst of things with the people, Israel, is still up in the air. Like the relationship piece has not been fixed.
Yes.
Like the life or death question has been dealt with.
Yes.
Great. But in terms of the relationship, we need to read more to see what's possible after this really big and important rift.
At the end last time, we were just noticing in chapter 32, verse 34, God says, "Go and lead the people to the place I described to you. My messenger here will go in front of you." And we were noticing how that sounds, like the messenger is in some way related to God. Like it's not that God is absent, but God's self seems to be maybe a little bit distanced here. And so when we pick up today, we're sort of dealing with that same kind of issue that you're noticing about the relationship and how, not is the relationship going to continue, but in what way will it continue and how close will it be and will God be present?
Yeah.
So let's just dive into the text then, beginning in chapter 33, and I'm reading in the Common English Bible. The Lord said to Moses, "Go and leave this place, you and the people whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt. Go to the land I promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob when I said, I'll give it to your descendants. I'll send a messenger before you. I'll drive out the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Go to this land full of milk and honey. But I won't go up with you because I would end up destroying you along the way, since you are a stubborn people." When the people heard the bad news, they were sorry. No one put on any jewelry because the Lord had said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites, you are a stubborn people. If I were to go up with you even for a single moment, I would destroy you. So now take off your jewelry while I figure out what to do with you." So after leaving Mount Horeb, the Israelites rid themselves of their jewelry. This picks up sort of in the same place that we left off in 32 by reiterating that go and leave this place, you and the people. I was interested in the fact that God here references the covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We saw that a little bit last time that Moses was reminding God of that covenant. Did you make anything of the fact that God here, like that covenant now is in God's mouth too?
Yeah. I think you're exactly right that this really picks up exactly where we left off with the themes from chapter 2. And when God was super angry initially and told Moses in the last chapter, like, forget them, I'm going to wipe them out and just make a new people from your lineage, Moses. One of Moses's arguments was, no, like you have to remember, like zoom out a little bit. Remember, they are part of this lineage. They are part of this covenant that you have already made. And so I feel like this is a way of God sort of affirming, like, yes, I do remember that covenant. I remember this thing that I promised you, and I'm going to follow through with that thing. But maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to wipe you out. I am going to give you this land that was promised. I'm going to do the things I said I was going to do. But it sounds here like that's it. Like, I'll do the things I've already promised.
I've made some commitments and I'm going to keep those commitments.
I'm going to keep my commitments.
But I might not be super happy about it. Is that kind of where you are?
Yeah, maybe I might not be super happy about it. I almost have this feeling of sort of like, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
I will follow through on the commitments I have made. I'm not going to be a jerk, but I'm not in this anymore. Like it feels to me in this moment like the relationship is a little bit over, and
Yes.
God is going to follow, like an amicable divorce, or maybe that's a bad example.
Well, the biblical text does use that analogy quite often of the relationship between God and Israel as like a marriage relationship that is sometimes it's really beautiful and lovely, and sometimes it is very strained. And here maybe God is sort of agreeing to go to marriage counseling or something like, I'm kind of done with this thing. I'm going to stay in it because I made a commitment. That's all I've got left. But like I'm still committed to following through. But I do think that sort of amicable divorce, or like can we repair the relationship? And the answer is, I'm not sure right now. Or maybe
I feel like
not.
Your reading of it is a little more positive than mine, which might be appropriate. But I don't even see them in like marriage counseling at this point. I see a sort of like, look, I'm out, but I'm going to do the things that I've already promised to do. Like I'm going to whatever, do the alimony or the like whatever.
So your idea is that when they get to the land, like God is sort of saying, when we get to the land, like I'm out of here. Like I'm going to follow through on that piece, and then that's the end of that.
Maybe.
I think I just read God as sort of saying, I'm going to stick around. Is that like there's an element of positivity in that for me, but I take your point that God is not at all pleased about having to follow through.
How do you read this part then that says, my translation in verse 3, but I will not go in your midst, since you are a stiff-necked people, lest I destroy you on the way. Like I can't actually be around you.
Yeah. There's a tension in this text because God is on the one hand saying, I'm going to send my messenger. And God is in a little bit going to say, I will go with you. And also, I can't stand being around you because you're a stiff-necked people. And so I sort of have read that as like God could say, look, you're on your own.
Yeah.
And instead,
that's right.
God says this, part of what I'm struggling with is how do we think about the messenger in relationship to God?
Yes.
And we've seen in this text, like when Moses encounters the God at the burning bush, it is first the messenger of God that is speaking, and then it turns out that God is speaking. And so they're not entirely different, but also they're not entirely the same. And so I think that's part of what I'm struggling with, is it feels like some element of God is continuing on, or at least a representative of God, but that God's self in some way is saying, I can't. The way that I have made sense of this is that we're talking about two different kinds of going. One is like, is God going to be present? To which I think the answer is yes. God is going to be present in the messenger. The other is, where is God going to live? Is God going to dwell? And God has been dwelling on Sinai, and they have made a tabernacle so that God can dwell with the people on the journey. But instead of doing the whole tabernacle thing, the people have instead made the golden calf in God's place. And so God is saying, I can't live with you, right? Like maybe I'm going to have an apartment on the east side or whatever. Like I'm going to stay here. I can't live with you, but I can at least like continue in the relationship. I don't know if I'm making too much of that distinction.
No, I mean, I think you're right. I think in chapter 32, when it says, I will send my messenger, it for me does have that ambiguity.
Yeah.
But here when it says, I will not go in your midst, because I'm afraid I would destroy you. Like you make me so angry.
Yeah.
Maybe you're right. There is a relationship that continues, but there's intentional distance. It's not an intimate relationship.
Yeah.
It feels like there's real distance. You know, it reminds me of a mutual teacher of ours, David Peterson, when he was the president of the Society for Biblical Literature, the president always gives a talk at the annual convention. And his talk that I remember was about families in the book of Genesis and how many times the family comes to a point of conflict where the best thing, it seems, for everyone involved is actually for them to split up. And so he talks about, Abraham and Lot split up, and Jacob and Esau, when Esau is like, I'm going to murder him. And so, so they split up. And so that when they're sort of in that period of anger, sometimes distance is the right thing.
Yeah.
And I guess that's sort of what I feel here.
Yeah. I think that makes good sense what you're saying. You had mentioned last week a passage from the Talmud that I had heard from Rabbi Jonathan Roos at Chautauqua. And so I went back after last week's episode and I looked it up. It's in the Talmud in Berachot 7a. And I was going to talk about this later, but it sort of makes sense to me to talk about it now.
Yeah.
So this Talmud piece, which I really love, begins with them talking about whether God prays. And so the one rabbi asked the other, where is it derived that the Holy One, blessed be he, prays? As it is stated, I will bring them to my holy mountain and make them joyful in the house of my prayer, quoting Isaiah 56:7. And then they say the verse doesn't say the house of their prayer, but the house of my prayer. So then we know that God prays. So then the question is, what does God pray?
What does God pray for?
And then it says Rav Zutra said that Rav said, God says, may it be my will that my mercy will overcome my anger towards Israel for their transgressions, and may my mercy prevail over my other attributes through which Israel is punished, and may I conduct myself toward my children Israel with the attribute of mercy, and may I enter before them beyond the letter of the law. So here, at least in my reading, we have God aware that God is capable of both deep mercy and deep anger, and is praying to God's self that God will lead with mercy and not with anger. And so the reason I bring that up here is because you are thinking about sometimes we're just so angry we have to separate. And I think that's a reasonable reading. I'm thinking of sometimes the way that I am when I get so the way that I can, like, with something is really bothering me and I know that my temper is short and my kids are on my nerves, I will go for a walk.
Yes.
It is not because I want to leave my children. It is because I know I'm angry and I cannot be the loving, caring, compassionate father I want to be. So I just like, look, I got to go and I'm going to work this thing out and I'm going to come back. One of my friends calls it rage walking. Like I just gotta work some stuff out. And then I'm going to come back to you and I'm going to be with you the way that I want to be with you. And I think this passage, I think it is not yet maybe known which of those is going to be maybe I'm going to go for a walk and never come back. Or maybe I'm going to go for a walk and come back so I can be the...
yes, you have persuaded me. I love that. I think that is absolutely on the table here.
Amy, we get this sort of retrospective, like we get the people taking off their jewelry, and then we get because God had said to them. But what God says to them is, take off your jewelry while I figure out what to do with you. Why does God care if they're wearing jewelry or not?
I can't help but also have in my mind the fact that Aaron told them to take off their earrings, and that's how they made the golden calf to begin with. I don't know exactly what to do with the juxtaposition of these. Without that other piece of information, I think I just would have read this as like, this is not a time to like wrap yourself in dignity and adornment. Like you should... It's not quite sackcloth and ashes, but like, it's not a time to pump yourself up and try to be beautiful. But I can't help but read it alongside the last chapter. And then I don't even know what exactly that would open up other than, I don't know. I wonder about this idea of like being willing to sacrifice some of your own sense of grandeur for the God of your understanding, or to be in relationship with the God of your understanding. And so in the last chapter, that was this golden calf, which was a little weird. And now it is not a golden calf, but it's also I don't know. Do you tie those two things together, or do you read this as an independent?
I think it's right to tie those together. And then I'm making one further tie, which is I think that this jewelry is the jewelry that they plundered from the Egyptians when they came out of Egypt. Mm-hmm. And so it was sort of their, like, I don't know, payment's not exactly right, but it's sort of their, like, you have had your labor deprived of you for 400 years. So when you leave, you can take some of the wealth of Egypt with you when you go. Mm-hmm. And that was the jewelry, I think. And so now saying, take that off, I don't know exactly where that lands either, but it has some resonance for me that this thing that was your reward for your, for your long labors leading to liberation, you don't get that. You don't get to wear that right now.
Yeah.
And so maybe this is about simplicity, or maybe this is about punishment for using that wealth inappropriately, something like that. Mm-hmm. One of the things I notice is that God says, take it off. And then the narration says they rid themselves of their jewelry, which I have read as they they Marie Kondoed it. Like they got rid of it. So they took like one more step than God asked them to. Mm. Is that a reasonable reading of that?
You're looking at verse 6?
Yeah.
I guess so. My translation has the Israelites remained stripped of their finery from Mount Horeb on.
Yeah. So I think, yes, that's so remain stripped of, I think a clunky way of saying they rid themselves of, right? Yeah, I think that difference between when God says, like, take it off, and then they remained, what was it? They remained deprived of?
Yeah, they remained stripped of their jewelry.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything to make of that, but it seems to me like God said, take that off, and they said, no, we're just going to, like, put it away from us. And I wonder if that's like, in my mind, this is a little bit parallel to the kind of, like, I'm not going to go with you because I'm so angry. I just want to make sure I'm my best self, that God has said. And now maybe the people are saying, if we've got the jewelry around us, maybe we're going to take it back up again. So we're just going to get rid of it in order to be our best self. I may be reading past what's actually in the text there, but
no, I think it's a good question. And actually it's the same verb, I think, that is used in a slightly different form for when they take it from the Egyptians.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting connection.
That idea that wealth, jewelry, finery stands in the way of the relationship with God, like that was partly Egypt's problem, was the accumulation of wealth. And this sort of excess wealth is what, like excess jewelry is what allowed the Israelites to create the calf.
Yeah.
And so like wealth just gets in the way. So put that off from you. Maybe a place to go with that.
Yeah.
All right, Amy, beginning in verse 7, we get a description of the tabernacle. I will confess to you before I read this that I am back and forth about whether to read this as a retrospection, like this is how things used to be, or whether this is to be narrated, like this is happening right now in this moment in the text.
Right.
So I'm going to read it the way it's written in the CEB, and then I'm going to ask you, should we read this as like happening now or happening, like remembering what used to happen?
Okay.
I'm picking up in verse 7. Moses took the tent and pitched it outside the camp, far away from the camp. He called it the meeting tent. Everyone who wanted advice from the Lord would go out to the meeting tent outside the camp. Whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people would rise and stand at the entrance to their tents and watch Moses until he had gone into the tent. When Moses entered the tent, the column of cloud would come down and stand at the tent's entrance while the Lord talked with Moses. When all the people saw the column of cloud standing at the tent's entrance, they would all rise and then bow down at the entrances to their tents. In this way, the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face, like two people talking to each other. Then Moses would come back to the camp, but his young assistant, Joshua, Nun's son, would not leave the tent. So before I ask you that question about when this is happening, I just want to ask you about what is happening. This is the tabernacle, right, that was described to be constructed.
I mean, I guess so. In my mind, this gets to some complicated sort of textual history.
Yes.
Because if you're just reading the narrative, they haven't built the tabernacle yet.
Yes.
They have gotten instructions about how to build it, but the actual construction starts in chapter 35.
So narratively, it doesn't kind of quite square no matter how you read it.
So narratively, it doesn't quite square. So if we're trying to read it narratively, I guess I'm seeing this as a simpler tent where Moses would go. Like usually the tent, the tabernacle would at least be called like the Ohel Moed, like the meeting tent, instead of just the Ohel, the tent. So I guess I had sort of read this as a precursor to
I like
the
that way of
big
reading
tent
it.
they're going to build. What was striking to me is that it's outside the camp. It's not, I always have this image of the meeting tent as being in the center of the camp. And this one is outside, which is, again, like which again, like the biblical story tells different versions of how exactly this system worked. We can't square it, but it fits very much within this story to imagine that Moses has to go outside the camp, which is like God is not so far away.
Yeah.
But God is not right in the midst of where the people are.
Yeah. Let's just talk for a minute about what's happening in the tent. So this tent is the place where God is present to Moses.
Mm-hmm.
Previously, God has been present to Moses like up on the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is sort of like, instead of Moses having to climb the mountain all the time, God's going to come be present with Moses in whatever this tent is. Is that how you read that?
That's how I read it. Yeah. It would be this place of encounter that I'm just realizing now verse 7 does have not just the Ohel, but it goes on to the Ohel Moed, the tent of meeting. And that's
it does.
verse.
You're right.
Yeah. So again, you can't quite square it narratively, but it is a place of encounter, a place where people go intentionally to have a moment with God, and where God seems to go to meet them.
So the way that I'm putting this narrative together is the tent's outside the camp. If you need advice, you go to the tent.
Mm-hmm.
Then Moses goes into the tent. And so you're kind of saying, hey, Moses, can you ask God about whatever? And then Moses goes in. And then all the people back in the camp are at their own tents, kind of being reverent while this is taking place. Is that how it works in your head?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think, honestly, it's a little confusing that it says whoever sought God would go out to the tent of meeting that was outside the camp. That makes it sound like it's not all mediated by Moses. But then the rest of it makes it sound like it is mediated by Moses.
The only one who's ever said to go into the tent is Moses in verse 8.
Yes.
But the others go out to the tent.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I really love this idea in verse 11 that God used to speak to Moses face to face, like two people talking to each other.
Yeah.
Is there anything I just think that's such a nice, like, couple buddies, like, having a chat. Is there anything to say out of that, about that?
I mean, I did not bring examples, I should have, but there are so many places in the biblical text where it seems like the cry of the people to God is like, don't hide your face from us. Like, you're turning away from what is happening. Don't turn away. Don't hide your face. And this is the opposite of that. Like, this is, if what we're going for is like relationship and intimacy and like a real knowledge of each other, the difference between like talking to someone face to face versus writing a letter or, or sending an email or doing something like that. Like, just think of what you can understand by actually not just being in the same room with someone, but being able to see. I mean, we'll see later, the actual seeing of the face aspect is a little more complicated when you're talking about God. But what you can understand in a communication by actually being face-to-face is tremendously different.
Yeah. We're going to get a little notice in the next chapter that you can't see God face-to-face.
Mm-hmm.
But here we have a note that Moses talks to God face to face.
Mm-hmm.
And so some ways that I can think about explaining that, one is that we have a temporal difference that like there was a time when you could do it, but in the future now you can't. One is that face to face here means something other than like gazing directly into God's eyes, but maybe means something more like, we're in the presence of one another directly. Maybe those are the two options I've got.
I mean, I think those are both good things. I guess what I notice is that here in verse 11, it doesn't say Moses saw God's face. And it seems like the issue later is that you can't see God's face. Here it says they would speak face to face. That for the way you and I communicate, that implies you can see their face. But
I like that. Yeah.
I suppose you can imagine some way of like some intimacy and communication of really being in each other's presence.
Yes.
That doesn't involve the seeing.
Yeah.
Per se.
So they would speak in person is basically kind of what it's saying.
Yeah.
I
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
They would speak in person.
All right, Amy, on this question of when is this narration happening, in my mind, there's two options, and you see this argued out in scholarship with no clear resolution. One is that this is narrating the way things have been up until now. So this is the time, as you were saying earlier, the time frame is a little messy, but that God has established this practice. I'm going to come down off Sinai. I'm going to meet you in this tent. This is how we do things. And then now that the golden calf has happened, what God is saying is, okay, we're not doing that anymore. And so now you're not going to have me present in your tent with you anymore. You're going to have to go have my messenger, but I can't be there. And so this is sort of recalling a past when they were close, and then now a future when they're going to be less close. The other option that I think you were sort of gesturing to earlier is that this is in the present moment, but that the reason that the tent is outside the camp is because God can't be in the middle of the camp where God ideally would be. And so this is already kind of like what God is saying is, I'm going to go with you, but I'm going to be like on the edge of town. Because if I'm in the middle of town, things are going to go badly. I don't know how much difference it makes, but is there one of those that sounds more right to you, or would you offer something else?
I don't have a very good academic reason for offering this. I guess just reading it in its narrative, its immediate context in the plot as it's unfolding. I tend to read it as something that is happening now, as you're saying, outside the camp for exactly that reason. And I think part of why I like to read it that way is that while God is interacting outside the camp with Moses, the people are in relationship to the fact that that is happening. Like God might not be interacting directly with the people right now, but when they see that this is happening, they would stand up and watch. Like they are sort of standing in reverence and witness to the fact that this is happening. And I think that kind of longing and I don't know, just have all your energy sort of heaped up on the fact that this thing is happening, even though you can't get inside of it yet. Yeah. It feels like energetically right to me for this moment in the story.
I think that's so interesting because, like, to me, that's the reading that, like, is sort of like God is not done with this relationship. Because what God is then saying is, look, I can't go with you, but I'm going to go, like, right kind of alongside of you. And I'm still going to be available to Moses, kind of wherever you are. And so God is saying, like, I'm done with you, but like, I'm just going to be right over there.
So I'm arguing both sides of it. You're saying
maybe
that's
I'm
possible.
just trying to see how
relationships are complicated, Bobby. It's all the things.
Yeah. I kind of like that. The other reading is more of a like, look, we had this moment together, but I can't do that anymore. So I'm sending my messenger with you, but I'm not going to live near you anymore. I'm going to stay here on Sinai, and you guys go and have a ball. And so it's funny to me that you and I just switched. You and I just kind of switched sides.
But I love the sort of poignancy of that. Like in the middle of this, there's like sort of you pause the plot to remember how good it used to be.
Yeah. Crazy what you could have had. Yeah.
Crazy what you could have had.
Hi, Hi, my name is John Weicker, and I am the Associate Pastor for Youth and Their Families at First Presbyterian Church of Durham, North Carolina. I am a Bible Worm supporter at the Bible Worm supporter level, $48 per year. And I do that not because we're on the narrative lectionary or even because I preach that often, although when I do preach and the texts line up, I certainly use the podcast. I actually use Bible Worm as my own personal devotion for the week. I'm someone who misses the deep theology and close reading of texts that I got to do a lot of in seminary. And in Bobby and Amy's work, I found that again. And so I listen on Monday mornings on my way over to church and then Monday afternoons on the way back as a way to prepare for the week, to do ministry, and to love Jesus and serve. I hope you'll join me in becoming a Bible Worm supporter too. And now back to this week's episode.
I think that one of the things that we are pointing out is there is some ambiguity in this text about how we're going to move forward, which I think is actually the salient point. And it's what Moses seems to pick up on in verse 12. So I'll start reading there. Moses said to the Lord, "Look, you've been telling me, lead these people forward, but you haven't told me whom you will send with me. Yet you've assured me, I know you by name and think highly of you. Now, if you do think highly of me, show me your ways so that I may know you and so that you may really approve of me. Remember, too, this nation is your people." The Lord replied, "I'll go myself and I'll help you." Moses replied, "If you won't go yourself, don't make us leave here, because how will anyone know that we have your special approval, both I and your people, unless you go with us? Only that distinguishes us, me and your people, from every other people on the earth." The Lord said to Moses, "I'll do exactly what you've asked, because you have my special approval, and I know you by name." I mean, there's a couple of things that are going on in here that are kind of fascinating to me. One of them is God keeps saying, "I'll go with you," and the you is in the singular. And Moses keeps saying, "me and this people," and they keep like coming at each other this way. Did you notice that?
I mean, I noticed that general tension. I don't think I noticed that specific like grammatical point. And you can't see it in the Hebrew. I mean, you can't see it in the English. So I'm really glad.
This is where the y'all Bible translation is really
This is
really
the y'all.
helpful.
This is exactly right. That's right. And I feel like that's the sort of the tension that we saw in chapter 32 also was like Moses is in the middle. And Moses has this connection with God and God has a connection with Moses. And Moses feels this connection with the people. And clearly the people feel connected to Moses, or they wouldn't have done this golden calf thing because he was late. And Moses keeps trying to say, like, you cannot just put me in the middle of this. Like,
Yeah.
I never asked to be in the middle of this. These were your people, God. And, you know, if you really like me, the way you're going to show that is by taking your people.
The point where that sticks out the most is when in verse 14, when God says, "I'll go myself and I'll help you." And Moses replies, "If you won't go yourself, don't make us leave here." Why does Moses say, "If you won't go yourself"? Is he just like repeating the point to make it clear? Or is there still a misunderstanding there?
It's a really good question. I mean, I think logically, I don't see any reason that you would say that again. I think I read it sort of as sort of as you're saying, like a doubling down, or like, don't just say you're going in the lead. Like, I'm not kidding. If you're not like, if you're not really going to do this, then don't send us out with your angel. Like I'm just saying words that say the same thing that you just said. Some kind of doubling down.
One way of understanding what's happening here is this debate about whether it's the messenger that's going to go or whether it's the tent of God with God's holy presence in it.
That's how I understand it.
Yeah. So when God says in verse 14, "I'll go myself," I think one way of reading it is Moses is not entirely clear. Like, what does that mean? Like, this question we started with was, what's the relationship of God and the messenger? Yeah. And does God consider the messenger to be a representation of God's self? And I to me, this like ambiguity is sort of driving this conversation a little bit. And God is not, if that's the issue, God is not super much being helpful about clarifying. Because when Moses comes back and says, only if you are with us, that's what distinguishes us, seems to me to be saying if the tent of God is in the midst of our people and God is present with us, that means we're different than everyone else. But if God is back on Sinai and we have like God's emissary with us, that's not it. That doesn't make us special. So you got to get over your anger and come with us. It's kind of how it's coming together for me.
I just got sort of caught up with the fact that in verses 14 and 15, when they're having this, God is saying, I will go in the lead. And Moses says, unless you will go in the lead. The Hebrew looks like it says something like, my face will go, your face will go. Like it's this panecha or panai, which I'm just thinking of in terms of you're pointing out that they're talking face to face.
Yeah.
And like there's again, that sort of intimacy factor. But I think Moses's question is fair. Like, you said, take the people. You said you're sending an angel. Who are you sending? Like, don't speak in vagaries here because I'm the guy on the ground. What is actually going on?
If you read that previous little segment in a retrospection, that's like we used to be face to face. And now Moses is saying, you've got to go face to face. Like, you've got to be present to us in that way. If you're going to stay here on Sinai and just send your messenger, just let us stay here. We want to be where you are. We don't want to go where the land of milk and honey if you're not going to be present with us in that way.
I love that. I hadn't thought about it quite that way, that we want to, it's more important to us to be where you are, to be close to you, than it is to be in some kind of, promised Disneyland.
Which is funny because what God is saying is we better not be around each other because there's no telling what I'm about to do next.
Right. And what Moses is saying is, no, we are in relationship to you. And this makes no sense if we're not in relationship to you.
One of the things that's so interesting to me, and we've seen this theme through last week and then now again this week, that God is very clear that God thinks highly of Moses. And Moses is very clear that Moses knows that God thinks highly of Moses. But Moses is really concerned about the well-being of the people and so keeps deflecting that. Like, I know that you're with me, but what about them? And I don't know what I want to say about that other than I'm really impressed with Moses here, that he's not that, like, you're a great guy, Moses, you have God's favor. That's not the end of anything for him. It's that only matters if it connects beyond me.
I mean, I feel like I say this all the time, but it just really brings me back every time to Moses didn't want this job. Moses did not ask for this. Moses said, do not make me your guy. I do not want to be the guy to bring these people out of Egypt. Send someone else. I'm not well equipped, blah, blah, blah. But now that he's in the job, he feels so connected on both sides.
That connection is really clear in verse 17, where God says, I'll do exactly what you've asked because you have my special approval and I know you by name. So we get that sense of like that real strong sense of the mediation role that Moses is playing here.
Yeah.
God and the people are estranged, but everybody trusts Moses. And so the people will do and God will do. And so Moses is kind of holding this whole thing together.
That's right.
Let me pick up then in verse 18. Moses said, please show me your glorious presence. The Lord said, I'll make all my goodness pass in front of you, and I'll proclaim before you the name, the Lord. I will be kind to whomever I wish to be kind, and I will have compassion to whomever I wish to be compassionate. But, the Lord said, you can't see my face because no one can see me and live. The Lord said, here is a place near me where you will stand beside the rock. As my glorious presence passes by, I'll set you in a gap in the rock, and I'll cover you with my hand until I've passed by. Then I'll take away my hand, and you will see my back, but my face won't be visible. Why do you think Moses asks to see the glorious presence right here?
a couple verses back in 12 and 13, I read Moses as asking for two things from God. One, you've got to lead these people forward.
Mhm.
And number two, you've got to reveal more of yourself to me. Don't pull back from this relationship. And also, don't pull back from this relationship, the me and Moses relationship, and also remember that these are your people. And so they talk first about this, lead this people forward. How exactly is that going to work? And God says that God will do that. And this to me feels like the second part of it. Let me know more
Yes,
of your ways.
yeah.
Let me know more about you. And really, this is the only, maybe it's just a personal thing, not just a personal thing. Maybe it's a personal request from Moses, but it also seems like if Moses is really going to be in the role of mediator between this human community and the divine, Moses needs to know everything Moses can know about what
Yes.
God wants and doesn't want and likes and doesn't like, and what evokes compassion and what evokes anger. And so the more God will give him access to that, the better he'll be able to sit in this difficult middle place.
Mhm. Moses asks to see the glorious presence. God replies, I'll make all my goodness pass in front of you.
Mm.
Can you help me make sense of the relationship there of glorious presence and all my goodness?
Oh, that's such a good question, Bobby. I hadn't really thought about it before, to be honest. This word for your presence in Hebrew, kavodecha, is I think of it as it's something, it's like gravitas, it's like heaviness, it's honor,
Yeah.
glory, majesty. I don't know. In a school, you would tell people shokavod, respect, something like that. And then for God to answer, I will make my goodness pass before you and proclaim the name and the grace that I grant and the compassion that I show. Is that the entirety of the kavod, or is that part of the kavod?
Right.
Is that just the I'm going to show you all the goodness and compassion with awareness. God certainly has self-awareness here that there's also sometimes anger and
Yes.
destructive capacity, and
Mm.
he doesn't want to show that to Moses. How do you read those things?
Now, I
together?
love where you were just headed there, that God's kavod includes both the mercy and the justice, both the compassion and the anger, and that full complexity is hard to look at directly. I like that a lot, if I understand what you're saying correctly. Where I had sort of gone with it was a little bit that a human mind cannot comprehend the glory of God in its totality, but we can comprehend the goodness that we see in the world that is a manifestation of that glory. And it's related for me to why God says, you can't look at my face, but I'll show you my back, which is we can't see God directly. We can't handle that, but we can see the manifestations of God in the world, the goodness or the back, God's back. We know that the face is there because we see the effects of the face in the world. And so maybe this is a way of saying the glory of God is with you, but you have to recognize it in the goodness that you see in the world, not in the hey, here's my glory, I'm going to look you full in the face. So we only ever see God slant or something like that.
I worked once with a bar mitzvah student who had this section, and we talked a lot about this. You cannot see my face and live. What does that mean? And he read it as a sort of things will never be the same if I show you the fullness of this mystery. You cannot live a human life.
Oh, I love that.
And know all the things. It feels very much like you can't eat from the tree of knowledge and live.
Yeah.
It changes everything. And so I'm not going to show you everything.
I love that. So it's not that it'll strike you dead, it's that it'll offer you so much life that like you will.
That it'll be different, right? You
Yeah.
can't go back after that.
It's sort of like when you escape from Plato's cave and you gaze upon the real world and you go back in the
That's
cave and try to
right.
explain it to people.
Yeah.
They think you're crazy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on then to 34, picking up in verse 1. The Lord said to Moses, "Cut 2 stone tablets like the first ones. I'll write on these tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke into pieces. Get ready in the morning and come up to Mount Sinai. Stand there on top of the mountain in front of me. No one else can come up with you. Don't allow anyone even to be seen anywhere on the mountain. Don't even let sheep and cattle graze in front of the mountain." So Moses cut 2 stone tablets like the first ones. He got up early in the morning and climbed up Mount Sinai, just as the Lord had commanded him. He carried the 2 stone tablets in his hands. The Lord came down in the cloud and stood there with him and proclaimed the name, the Lord. The Lord passed in front of him and proclaimed, the Lord, a God who is compassionate and merciful, very patient, full of great loyalty and faithfulness, showing great loyalty to 1,000 generations, forgiving every kind of sin and rebellion, yet by no means clearing the guilty, punishing for their parents' sins their children and their grandchildren, as well as the 3rd and 4th generation. At once Moses bowed down to the ground and worshipped. He said, "If you approve of me, Lord, please go along with us. Although these are stubborn people, forgive our guilt and our sin, and take us as your own possession." Amy, the first thing that I notice here, and I notice it partly because I kept trying to leave out these verses and you kept insisting on them, is all of the stuff at the beginning about the tablets that seem to be necessary in some way for God to appear to Moses. Can you talk to me? So Moses had shattered the first tablets when he came down and saw what was happening in the camp. And here we've got the narration, at least the beginning of it, of the second set of tablets. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that and why that was important to you?
Why they're so important to me? Yeah. There are 2 things about the tablets that are important to me. One of them is, the first set of tablets, it seemed like it was entirely a product of God. God had hewn the stone and written them by hand on front and back. And this time, Moses is it's a little more of a partnership. Like Moses is supposed to carve the tablets like the first ones, and then God will do the writing. I think that opens up just sort of interesting questions about how this relationship works and what things are a partnership and what things are just handed down. Mm. The other thing is that when they're building the temple in Kings and setting up all the furniture in there, it narrates that these tablets will go in the Ark of the Covenant that is in the temple. And of course, the rabbis reading this text then say, well, what happened to the broken tablets?
Yeah.
And they imagine that the broken tablets are placed in the ark alongside the new tablets. And I feel like that is a really core sort of Jewish idea and teaching about how relationship works and how relationship to God works and how our lives work in the world. Like you can't pretend the thing didn't happen. You don't have to hide the fact that there was this whole eruption and brokenness. And in fact, it should be an encouragement to you to know that we got through this. There was this huge rift and we got through it. And we should remember that we are capable of such things and need to be careful not to do them again. Yeah. Like if you never tell the story, then... But to think that they would be put in the Ark of the Covenant alongside the intact ones, like that's...
I love that so much, Amy. I've never heard that story before. Like at the core of this covenant is that memory of how wrong it went the first time, but how it was reconstituted and renewed.
Yeah.
When the Lord comes in front of Moses... So first we get a double repetition of the divine name. Mm-hmm. You and I were talking not too long ago about how often that happens. Maybe it was in the Saul passage and Acts 9 where he says Saul, Saul, and we talked about all the times where it's like Abraham, Abraham, Moses, Moses, Samuel, Samuel. Here God calls God's own name twice, which I don't quite know what to do with that, but I kind of like it. Like this, in some sense, this is God's call story or something like that.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so you read it as God passed before Moses and God proclaimed these words.
Yes. Is that not how?
I mean, I
one
think
must read it?
that is completely a viable reading. I think there are some people who read it as God passed before Moses and Moses proclaimed these things.
Well, I'm so interested in that because to me, both theologically and grammatically, that is a strained reading. But it may just be because I'm habituated to reading it the other way. So I'm curious.
I mean, it's not grammatically impossible.
It's not impossible. I didn't say it was impossible. I said it was grammatically strained.
I think it's just, I don't know. I guess I sort of grew up imagining that Moses is calling out to God instead of God is calling God's own name. That's weird.
Well, God just said a little bit ago.
Yeah, okay, fine. I will proclaim before you the name of God.
The Lord. Yeah.
Yeah.
In verse 19 and 33:19.
Okay, fine.
And it is important to me in various ways that this is God's divine self-revelation. And so Moses has asked to know more about God, and God says, all right, you want to know more about me? Well, I'll tell you. And this is that. And so it is very core to my sort of framing of things that this is God saying this. And so I'm probably unnecessarily resistant to other ways of reading it. So
No, I
don't
need to take this from you, Bobby. I think
It's okay.
I still would see it as a sort of revelation, but the kind of thing that when Moses is in such close proximity to God, that Moses has an understanding that Moses didn't have before. So basically it is a revelation from God, but just passing through Moses' lips.
Comes out of Moses' mouth.
Yeah. Well, we don't need to debate that point.
I can go there. Well, I'm not going to go there, but I could
That's
go there.
fine.
Yeah. So whoever is making this revelation, we get in 34:6 to 7a, we get this list: compassionate, merciful, patient, full of loyalty and faithfulness, showing loyalty to 1,000 generations, forgiving every kind of sin and rebellion. So I just want to let that be that for a minute and talk about that list of attributes of God. What stands out to you? What do you notice in that list of divine attributes?
I think I am a little distracted maybe by the role of this list in Jewish liturgy is profound.
Yeah.
It's recited throughout the High Holy Days and especially on Yom Kippur, like over and over and over again, as this sort of call to God to be God's most compassionate self. And it's so far on one side of the continuum. Like it's so like open and abundant and sort of like soft and generous and flowing and extending kindness to the 1,000th generation, forgiving all kinds of wrongdoing. Like it is only open, soft, and loving.
Yeah.
What do you notice about those words?
I mean, I think I'm probably somewhere similar. Like this is the kind of depiction of God that I grew up with in my little Presbyterian church in South Carolina. Like all of the good things, like everything you would hope, like to worship a God who is these things. Some of these words like compassion and mercy and patience, we have seen recently in the narrative lectionary, Paul sort of pulling those out as attributes that people should also have. And, this is also within the Hebrew scriptures themselves, like these are the kinds of attributes that we hope to have for one another. And so I really love this depiction of God, especially this idea. I mean, the core here is compassion and mercy and forgiving every kind of sin and rebellion is a depiction of a God who loves and is positively oriented to us, no matter whether we deserve it or not.
Yes. Yes.
and that we can rely on that God to sort of have our back
Yes.
even when we've messed up. And I think that is really beautiful. It makes it then very kind of harsh to me. And so when we pick up in 7b,
Yeah.
yet the big but theology, but by no means clearing the guilty, punishing for their parents' sins, their children and their grandchildren, as well as the third and fourth generation. So we just had forgiving all kinds of sins, and now we have, but not real, but also not that. I don't know. I can't read that in any other way than as a disjunction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like God has said one thing and then said something. It doesn't fully contradict it because, the love and forgiveness was for 1,000 generations and the judging and not clearing is for 4 generations. So it's like the weight of God's self is on the compassion foot.
Yeah.
Like 1,000 parts to 4.
Yeah.
But also this part over here, you got to deal with that. I don't know. It sits very uncomfortably for me. I'm curious what you think about it.
I mean, I think it gets back to the question of what do we mean by forgiving? Like, does the word, again, at the beginning of this verse for forgiving, we talked about last time, is sort of like the word for like bearing, like lifting, holding. And if we imagine that means, and there's no consequences, then it is a disconnect with the rest of the verse. If we imagine that means the relationship can endure and there might also be consequences, then it's not necessarily in direct tension. I don't know. Yeah. Did I sell you on that? What do you think?
Well, I think so. So Abraham Joshua Heschel makes a distinction between a wrathful God and the wrath of God.
Yeah.
And I think James Cone then maybe picks that up and talks about God's love and God's wrath as being 2 sides of the same coin. And what I think they both mean by that is that in order for God to ensure a just world, there has to be wrath against people who are acting unjustly. Or Cone says, love for the oppressed is expressed as wrath for the oppressor. And that's how I kind of make sense of this, which I think is related to what you're saying, that if it's all rainbows and puppies, then that doesn't ensure a just and compassionate world. God has to have the capacity to act in wrath. And that makes me so uncomfortable to say that. Like, I hate that with every ounce of my being. And also, I think that might be exactly true.
Yeah.
My teacher, Walter Brueggemann, this is a really important verse for him. He talks about this as a disjunction at the heart of the divine subject, which I don't actually know if he knew this Berachot passage that we were reading before, but Brueggemann's argument is that in God's heart, God really wants to be compassionate and merciful, but sometimes God defends God's honor. And even God never quite knows which one of those things God is going to respond with in any given instance. And so it's a little bit like saying, look, this is all of me here. I am compassionate and merciful, and I pray to myself that I will be loving and compassionate. But I have a justice side, a judgment side, a wrathful side. And sometimes that gets engaged. And this is just who I am. And like, what do we do with that? I don't know, but that is just sort of the nature of God. And God understands that about God's self and reveals it to Moses here. Amy, there's so much one could say about this passage. I want to talk to you about this for so much longer.
I know.
But our time is upon us, and our task is to think about where this text might touch the ground for us and for our communities in this time and place. So what is resonating with you out of this text? On our theme of, what is our theme? On our theme of disputing with God.
Disputing with God. And by disputing with God in this, in the context of this text, what I feel is insisting on enduring relationship.
Yeah.
Even when it comes with punishment, even when like we'd rather stay here around Sinai than travel to the land of milk and honey with you. We would rather be in relationship with you even when there is consequences for our action than have you go off and send an angel in our midst instead because you can't even stand us. Like stay stay with us. When this passage is read at Yom Kippur, it's always read right before our list of confessions there's this sort of the list of confessions of all the evils that humans do in the world. Okay, I'm going to chant just one time how it's done. And if you look at the Hebrew, it will amuse you, I think.
Where are you in 34?
I am, starting in the middle of 34:6. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum v'Chanun, Erech Apayim v'Rav Chesed v'Emet, Notzer Chesed lehalafim, Nosei Avon v'Fesha, V'chata v'nakeh. And then we go back to the beginning. So we read all the good part, right? And then the next phrase in Hebrew is, yet not remitting all punishment. And we read the word remitting and we leave out the not, and then we stop. So it's like, it's not only that we're only talking about the compassion, it's like emphatically so. Like anyone who knows this text, and I think there's an assumption that people chanting this know that that's not the whole of the text. And it's very pointed.
Yeah.
And the way it was taught to me is that the point at that moment in the service is not to give a full and true theological portrait of God. It is to create a space where a human actually feels enough safety to confess honestly the things they need to confess. And what we need to do that, to have an honest and true relationship, is to know that God's not going to leave the relationship. If you're afraid that you're going to be abandoned for whatever you've done, you just won't say the things. You won't even say them to yourself. You won't acknowledge them. If we believe that God will stay with us, it just opens up a different possibility, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so reading this overall text in the context of disputing with God, I don't know. I feel really moved by the precarity at this point in the story of that relationship, and by Moses' commitment to staying in the messy relationship when there are so many ways to make this cleaner. And that inspires me to try to stay in it myself.
I love that reading, Amy, and this staying in the relationship. And you know, where I think I'm somewhere similar to you, as everything you've said, I affirm completely. I am interested in the character of God also in this text. And the way that I'm reading the character of God today is a little bit the same as God saying, look, I'm a complicated being. And there are some things, if we're going to be in this relationship, there are some things you need to know about me. And so it's this sort of, I mean, I was sort of jokingly talking about marriage counseling earlier, but I'm sort of resonating with this idea now that, you know, what's happening here is the people are saying, look, we're stiff-necked. Like at the very end, Moses said, please stay with us, even though we have stiff necks. And, you know, and then a little bit God saying, look, y'all, like, I'm so angry right now. I can't even be in the same room as you. I'm going to send my messenger because I don't know if I trust myself to be with you. I'm thinking about that prayer in Berachot where God is saying, may I treat you with compassion and not with anger. And so God's saying, look, I want to be with you. I want to stay in this relationship, but I don't know if you can handle all of me in some sense. Like maybe God is sort of holding God's self back a little bit from the relationship because God knows that this 7b, yet by no means clearing the guilty, like that's part of who God is too. And this anger that God has, that's part of who God is too. And so when Moses says, we would rather stay here with you and never get to the promised land than we would go to the promised land without you or with your messenger, it's a little bit the people also saying to God, like, we accept all of you the way you are, and we're asking you to accept all of us the way we are. And so it's that image you're giving us of the broken tablets that are in the Ark of the Covenant. And like, there is woundedness and complication and difficulty here on all sides of this relationship. And here we have a statement of commitment to each other. We would stay here with you if you wouldn't go with us. And God saying, I will go with you, and here's who I am. And them saying, okay, we can go on together in all of this messiness and complication. Now, I myself would be just as happy to leave the angry part of God behind, and often that is what my theology has done. And I honestly am very uncomfortable with a theology of God's anger. But along the lines of what we were talking about earlier, I think it really is an attribute of God in the biblical text that needs to be taken seriously, and so that we always are recognizing that the God we are in relationship with is a God who loves deeply, but also a God who wants there to be justice in the world, and sometimes is angered by the things that we do or don't do. And that genuine relationship requires us allowing God to be all of that complex being, even as God allows us to be the complex beings that we are.
I love that. I love this text. I love a complicated text.
Me too. Me too, Amy. All right, next week we are going to skip back in the narrative to Genesis chapter 18, in that story in which God and angels appear to Abraham, and Abraham is going to try to talk them down from destroying Sodom in Genesis 18, 16 to 33. Amy, I love talking with you about this text so much. I'm looking forward to talking with you about that one too.
Yeah, let's see what trouble we can get into.
All right, Amy. See you
All
next
right,
time.
have a good week.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of Bible Worm. If you've enjoyed this free podcast, we hope you'll help us keep it going by joining our Patreon for as little as $4 per month. You can also sign up for other goodies like early access, video lectures, weekly liturgies, and more. Visit patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast for details.
Bible Worm is produced and edited by Bobby Williamson. Our theme song is sung by Colin Bagby, and our theme music is The World at Large by Dano Songs. Many thanks to all our Patreon supporters for helping make this podcast possible.
Join us next week when we'll continue our summer series on disputing with God with the story of Abraham negotiating with God over Sodom, as told in Genesis 18, 16 to 33. Until then, keep on digging.